7 years. I lived like a shadow in my own home. Everyone thought I was worthless, but they didn't know. The truth was about to come out. That was the sentence I whispered to myself the night everything began to change. Words barely audible, like a secret pact I was making with the darkness. Before I take you deeper into today's dramatic story, let me pause for a moment. Don't forget to subscribe to her Betrayal stories and turn on the notification bell. This is where you'll always find powerful tales of sacrifice, betrayal, and shocking twists. And tell me, where are you watching from today? Drop a comment below. Who knows? The next story might just reflect your own experience. I'm Emily Carter, 38 years old. To the world, my husband Richard Harrison was the perfect man. He had the face people trusted, the wealth people envied, and the charm that made neighbors call him a dream husband. His photographs in the paper showed tailored suits, champagne flutes raised, and a smile that could sell perfection. But behind the heavy doors of our mansion, perfection cracked into cruelty. Richard never missed a chance to remind me of my place, beneath him. "You're a failure. Nothing more than cheap decor in my golden life." His voice was velvet over steel, smooth in tone, brutal in meaning. And he wasn't alone in his scorn. His mother, Eleanor, carried her venom in pearls and perfume. She smiled sweetly in public, but when the audience vanished, her words cut sharper than glass. "You're not fit for my son. Be grateful he keeps you." Each syllable was acid. Then there was Victoria, Richard's sister. Every visit felt like inspection. Her eyes scanned me as if I were furniture needing polish, or worse, as if I were the maid wearing the wrong clothes. Her silence was never neutral, it was dripping judgment. I learned to survive by swallowing it all. On the outside, silence. On the inside, fire. Because silence was my cover. They thought I was an ornament, silent, decorative, easily replaced. What they never knew was that I had already made my first move long ago. I had sold my grandmother's bracelet, my last keepsake, a piece of her warmth still lingering on my skin. I skipped lunches for months, feigned fullness, let hunger gnaw at me just to save. With those hidden dollars, I bought a battered second-hand laptop. Every night, after clearing their wine glasses and polishing their expensive china, I disappeared into the storage room. Among dusty boxes and forgotten furniture, I opened that laptop like it was a portal to freedom. Quietly, painfully, secretly, I studied law online. Each page of notes, each case I read, was a brick in the foundation of my escape. My revenge wasn't forged in rage. It was written in contracts, sharpened in statutes. They thought I was polishing silver. In truth, I was polishing my sword. Then came the night everything shifted. I was carrying a tray of crystal glasses past Richard's study when his voice stopped me cold. The door was cracked just enough. His words slipped through, cruel and clear. "Once she signs the new prenup, it's over. She won't get a dime." The glasses nearly slid from my hands, but I gripped tighter. My chest constricted. My knees wobbled, but my face stayed steady. A servant, a shadow, a ghost. That's what they expected me to be. Inside, though, something broke. That was the night the seed of conflict sprouted. Days later, Richard made his move. We were in the kitchen. Sunlight spilled across the marble counters, cold and unforgiving. He placed a stack of papers in front of me, each page crisp, each word loaded with betrayal. Prenuptial agreement. His smile was sharp but empty, a blade disguised as kindness. "If you really loved me, Emily, you'd sign without question." He slid a pen toward me. The silence between us crackled. My hand trembled as I picked it up, but not from fear anymore. Fear had been my roommate for too many years. Now, something else moved inside me. Resolve. Because Richard didn't know that while he worked to strip me of dignity, I was already arming myself with knowledge, with law, with truth. I wasn't the failure he named me. I was the witness to every cruelty, the keeper of every receipt, the architect of a quiet rebellion. And now let me turn to you, my listener. If you were standing there, pen in hand, would you sign or would you fight? Don't forget to subscribe to her betrayal stories and hit the bell. This is where you'll always find tales of sacrifice, betrayal, and shocking twists. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below. Who knows? The next story might just echo your own life. That night, as Richard slept beside me, his breathing heavy and oblivious, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My lips moved soundlessly, repeating the words like a vow. 7 years of silence end soon. The storm had begun. The morning after Richard slid the prenup across the marble counter, I woke to a house that no longer felt like a home. It wasn't just quiet. It was staged silence, like a museum curated to make me feel small. Richard swept into the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, his voice clipped. Thursday's board dinner. She'll sign before then. He didn't even glance at me. Eleanor followed in pearls that clinked like little verdicts. After the signing, darling, we'll finally be rid of distractions. I steadied my hands against the counter. I'll be reviewing the agreement with counsel. Richard finally looked at me, eyes narrowing. Counsel? Since when do you need a lawyer? Since this morning, I said, meeting his stare. I need 48 hours. A tick jumped in his jaw. 48 hours. Don't make me regret being generous. 48 hours. To them, it was a countdown to my obedience. To me, it was a countdown to war. At lunch, I slid the prenup across the cafe table to Sarah Lopez, my only confidant. She skimmed, frown deepening. This is poison written in velvet, she said. It strips you of every right. No counsel, no claim to assets. Even your years of labor defined as affection with no value. Emily, it's a trap. I won't sign, I whispered. Good, she said. We build a counter. If he retaliates, we file. And listen, if you need shelter, you have my couch. I hesitated. If you were me, would you fight? Or just walk away? Her eyes locked on mine. Fight smart. Walk if the house catches fire. Back home, the fire was already smoldering. I found Victoria rifling through my closet, holding my grandmother's silk scarf. In my wardrobe? I asked. She smirked. Relax. I was only looking for a mirror. You don't need clothes, Emily. You need a job. I forced a smile. You're right. I'm already working on it. If only she knew what kind of work I meant. That night, Richard dropped a velvet box on the counter. Inside, diamond earrings, cold as icicles. A peace offering, he said smoothly. Sign, and we end this nonsense. We agreed on 48 hours. His voice softened, but the venom sharpened. You're not built for conflict. That's why I chose you. You chose me to be easy, I shot back. I chose you because powerful men need quiet at home. He lifted a glass of bourbon. Don't ruin your reputation pretending to be someone you're not. Or yours? I asked. His smile didn't reach his eyes. My reputation is bulletproof. But even the bulletproof bleed when the truth gets loud enough. The days that followed tightened around me like a corset. Eleanor scolded my grocery choices. Over tea, she said, You're lucky. Richard is a man women pray for. What do they pray for? I asked. A quiet life? Or a silenced one? Her porcelain cup clattered against its saucer. Be careful how you speak to me. If respect is a two-way street, I said, Why am I the only one walking? That evening, my secret phone buzzed. Unknown number. Tell him to stop lying to both of us. He promised me the lake house after the divorce. Attached was a photo. Richard's hand on a woman's thigh, crimson nails, a diamond bracelet glittering. Lauren Davis. The bracelet was Eleanor's favorite design. My pulse raced. I forwarded the message to Sarah. She replied instantly, "Evidence. Save everything. The betrayal wasn't just financial anymore. It was flesh, blood, and diamonds." The next morning, the gardener handed me an envelope he'd found under the front step. Inside, a printed email from Richard to Lauren. "She thinks she'll get something. She'll get her suitcase. After the gala, I'm done with the charity case." Charity case. The words hollowed me out. I filed the email in a folder labeled receipts and hid it behind cleaning supplies. Men like Richard never looked there. At dinner that night, silverware chimed against china. I set down my glass and asked, "Who is Lauren?" Richard didn't blink. "A client." "Clients don't usually ask for lake houses," I said. Eleanor's fork froze midair. "What are you implying?" "That charity goes both ways." Richard's jaw tightened. "You're hysterical." "Hysteria," I said calmly, "is what you call a woman when she isn't convenient." Silence. Then his voice cut sharp. "Sign the agreement." "No." The word hung heavy, a gavel strike in the dining room. His eyes hardened. "You'll regret this." Regret had been my companion for years. Tonight, I evicted it. That night, I called my father. Isolation was one of Richard's polished talents. Months had passed since we'd spoken. Dad answered on the second ring. "Em, you okay?" "I'm getting there," I whispered. "I don't need rescuing. I just need you to witness me." His breath eased out like a prayer. "Then I'll be there." For the first time, I wasn't fighting alone. The countdown tightened. Eleanor prepared the board dinner with military precision. Victoria rehearsed the seating chart like a chess match. And in Richard's study, the actual chessboard still sat untouched. Every piece, waiting for a first move. On the morning of the third day, Richard placed a pen on the counter like a sacrament. 48 hours. Sign. I looked him dead in the eye. "I won't be signing your agreement." He barked a laugh. "Then you'll leave with nothing." My voice was steady. "That's the last lie you'll tell in this house." And somewhere in the quiet, I swore I felt the other side of the chessboard finally move. The third night came like a warning. Outside, a storm pressed against the windows, rain clawing at the glass as though the sky itself wanted to knock on my door. Lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the room in flashes of white, each one reminding me that time was running out. My heart beat in rhythms that matched the thunder. This wasn't just weather. It was a drum roll for revelation. That morning, Richard had barked his orders. "The gala is Friday. Be flawless. Do not embarrass me." His voice was sharp, clipped, as if I were one of his employees, not his wife. He left without a kiss, his cufflinks gleaming like handcuffs as he closed the door. The gala, his grand cathedral, a glittering event filled with shareholders, journalists, and politicians, his stage to parade me as the obedient wife who had signed away her worth. But he underestimated one thing. My quiet had never meant surrender. For 7 years I'd been invisible. Tonight, the world would see me. That evening, I returned to my hidden laptop, the one bought with pawned jewelry and skipped lunches. I opened the folder labeled receipts. Emails from Richard to Lauren Davis filled the screen. Cruel words that reduced me to a charity case, promises of jewels and houses meant for her. His arrogance dripped from every line. I saved everything twice. once to the cloud, once to a drive hidden behind cleaning supplies. Men like Richard never looked where women hid pain. I added new pages, a draft speech, a timeline of his financial manipulation, screenshots of bank accounts he thought I would never find. Each click was a heartbeat, each file a weapon. And then, the final piece. A letter from my father, Thomas Carter. He had discovered what Richard never suspected. The trust my late mother left me, the money Richard claimed had been invested into the house, was untouched, quietly accruing interest in my maiden name. For 7 years, Richard believed he had drained me dry. In truth, I had been holding the seed of my own freedom all along. The moment he tried to bury me, I became the soil where my comeback grew. He thought I was his weakness. He never realized I was becoming his reckoning. Thursday night, Sarah arrived, rain dripping from her coat. She carried a manila folder like it contained dynamite. "Judge Catherine O'Connor owes me a favor," she said, her eyes sharp. "She'll be at the gala. Off duty, but watching." My fingers tightened around the folder. What does that mean for me? It means if Richard tries to corner you, she'll know exactly what's happening. She's seen these contracts overturned. If you're ready to make a move, that's your window. I swallowed hard. You think I can do this? Sarah's grip was warm, grounding. Emily, you've already been doing it. Every day you survived here, you built your case. Now you just have to let the world see. Her words sank into me like fire in my veins. The next day, the Harrison estate buzzed like a poisoned hive. The storm outside mirrored the storm within those walls. Eleanor barked orders into her phone, demanding floral arrangements the size of monuments. Servants scurried as if the wrong flower stem might earn her wrath. Victoria rehearsed her introduction for the press, her tone sugary, her smile rehearsed. My brother and his wife. A perfect marriage. The hypocrisy made my stomach turn. And Richard. Richard stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie again and again until I thought the glass would crack. His reflection looked polished, powerful, untouchable. But the truth was already eating at the edges. Meanwhile, I ironed my simple navy dress. Not designer, not borrowed diamonds, just fabric that fit me, not their expectations. When Eleanor caught sight of me, she scoffed. "Couldn't you at least try to look like someone who belongs?" I met her gaze in the mirror, my voice quiet but certain. "I belong more than you think." Richard glanced over, lips curling into that familiar clipped smile. "Smile tonight. That's all I need from you. Smile, like a painted doll, silent and obedient." I nodded, but my reflection smiled back with something sharper. Tonight, my smile would be my blade. The gala hall shimmered like a cathedral of wealth, chandeliers blazing like constellations, champagne flowing like rivers of gold, laughter echoing across marble walls. My heels clicked against the polished stone floor. Flashbulbs blinded me as cameras snapped. Richard held my arm like a trophy. Eleanor hovered like a queen commanding her court. Victoria trailed behind like an eager princess awaiting her spotlight. I played the part, but inside me, every step was a countdown. Halfway through the evening, as the orchestra swelled, a voice sliced through the music. "Ladies and gentlemen, forgive the interruption." The crowd fell into stunned silence. My breath caught in my throat. It was my father, Thomas Carter. He wasn't supposed to be here, yet there he stood at the edge of the stage, suit rumpled, hair damp from the storm, eyes steady with fire. Gasps rippled. Security stepped forward, but Judge O'Connor lifted her hand, her voice firm. "Let him speak." All eyes turned. Richard's grip tightened on my wrist, iron digging into flesh. "Dad?" I whispered, hardly believing. He nodded once. "7 years of silence ends tonight." My heart lurched. He had repeated the words I whispered to myself in the darkest hours. My private mantra had just become public war. The music cut. The air grew electric. Richard bent toward me, his whisper a blade against my ear. Get him out before this becomes a circus. But it was already too late. My father mounted the stage, lifting a sealed envelope high. His voice rang through the ballroom like a thunderclap. For 7 years, my daughter has been dismissed, diminished, and discarded in her own home. But the truth, he held the envelope higher. The truth is here. Cameras flashed like lightning. Gasps cracked the silence. My world tilted, the storm outside now raging inside. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. If you were me, standing in that hall with chandeliers blazing and secrets unfolding, your father revealing what you hadn't dared to speak, what would you do? Would you hide behind silence or step forward into the fire? I inhaled, squared my shoulders, and walked toward the stage, because I knew this was my turning point. The fire was lit. Next came the explosion. The ballroom had never been so silent. Chandeliers blazed overhead, scattering prisms of light, but they felt cold, as if even the crystals were judging. The scent of roses from Eleanor's towering centerpieces clashed with the metallic edge of fear in the air. My father stood tall near the stage, envelope raised like a torch. Judge O'Connor hovered at his side, calm and immovable. Richard's grip crushed my wrist until my bones screamed. My breath hitched, but inside me, something else had already snapped. My silence. Dad, I whispered. His nod was firm. This is your fight now. Richard tugged at my arm, his smile stretched thin for the cameras. Don't do this, Emily. Think of the press. I yanked free. The sharp click of my heels against marble echoed like gunshots as I walked forward. For once, Richard, I am thinking of the press. Gasps rippled. Flashbulbs burst in a frenzy. The crowd parted like dry grass before fire. I reached the microphone. My hands shook, but my voice steadied with each syllable. For 7 years you saw me at Richard Harrison's side. You believed his story, that I was lucky, silent, small. Tonight, you deserve the truth. I opened the envelope. The paper crackled like thunder in the stillness. Inside was the proof my father had safeguarded. My mother's untouched trust, the inheritance Richard swore he had drained. He told me my mother's gift had vanished into his house, his lifestyle. But it was here, protected in my name, quietly growing while he called me a burden. Murmurs rippled across the crowd. A woman in the front row pressed a hand to her mouth. Eleanor's pearls rattled against her collarbone. Someone whispered, "She has proof." Richard lunged forward, hand outstretched to rip the letter from me, but Judge O'Connor's voice rang out like a gavel. Touch her, and it's assault, in front of 500 witnesses. The courtroom had come to Richard's kingdom, and he was no longer the judge. Behind me, the massive LED screen flickered. Richard had rented it to showcase his empire. Instead, Sarah had hijacked the feed. One by one, Richard's emails blazed 20 feet high. She's nothing more than cheap decor in this house. After the gala, I'm done with the charity case. She'll get her suitcase. Lauren gets the lake house. The words glared like divine judgment, larger than life, impossible to deny. Gasps filled the hall. Reporters scrambled closer, cameras snapping with relentless hunger. These are his promises, I said, my voice ringing. Not to me, to his mistress. This is the man who vowed to honor me. Shouts broke out. A shareholder muttered curses. A woman's champagne glass shattered against the floor. Richard's face drained. Those are taken out of context. Context? I shot back. Does charity case need context? Does giving away My home to another woman need explanation? The mask of Richard Harrison, perfect husband, was collapsing in real time. And then, Lauren Davis emerged. A crimson dress clung to her like fire, her diamond bracelet flashing with each trembling step. "He promised me more than a lake house," she said, voice breaking but strong enough to carry. "He promised me her life would be over." The hall erupted. Chairs scraped, voices rose, cameras zoomed in like vultures on a carcass. The domino had fallen. Victoria stumbled forward, pale as ivory, hands shaking. "Emily, I didn't know." "Stop lying," Eleanor spat, venom dripping, but Victoria broke. "I saw the accounts. I knew. I stayed quiet because family loyalty." Her voice cracked. The crowd hissed. Reporters leaned in, devouring every word. Eleanor's mask shattered completely. She turned toward me, trembling with rage. "We tried to break you," she hissed, "because you were never one of us." Gasps tore through the hall. The sentence was poison, public and irreversible. I straightened, my spine a steel rod. "Break me? No, Eleanor, you forged me." They hadn't destroyed me, they had sharpened me into their undoing. Judge O'Connor's voice boomed, steady and final. "For the record, the prenuptial agreement is unconscionable, fraudulent, and void under New York law. Mr. Harrison, your contract is worthless." Richard froze, eyes wide. A tremor ran through his hand. The glass slipped from his fingers, crashing to the floor. Red wine spread across the white linen, a blood stain blooming for all to see. The hall held its breath. I turned to him, my words deliberate, each one a blade. "This villa? Mine? This company? Built on lies? And now every shareholder knows it? You don't get to touch me anymore." For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then applause thundered. First hesitant, then swelling into a roar that shook the chandeliers. Richard lunged again, desperation shredding his mask of composure, but security restrained him. His cufflinks clanged against the marble floor as he thrashed, the sound pitiful compared to the man he once pretended to be. Eleanor shrieked, mascara streaking. Victoria sobbed into her palms. Lauren slipped out, her crimson dress swallowed by the crowd. And me? I stood tall beneath the chandeliers, my breath steady, my body finally free. If you were standing where I stood, watching your betrayers crumble beneath truth's light, would you cry? Would you laugh? I did neither. I simply stood. Because strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the silence after chains fall away. I raised the microphone one last time, voice steady as stone. "Respect isn't given by blood. It's earned through love and kindness, and I will never beg for either again." The hall erupted. Reporters surged. Cameras flashed, until the light blurred my vision white. Richard collapsed into a chair, head in his hands. Eleanor covered her face. Victoria whispered apologies no one heard. The world had shifted. The queen had fallen. The pawn had crossed the board. And I, Emily Carter, once called a failure, was the storm. The night of the gala ended with thunder rolling over the city, but inside me, the storm had calmed. For the first time in years, the weight slid off my shoulders. Reporters swarmed, cameras captured Richard's downfall, Eleanor's confession spread like wildfire. Yet, in the chaos, I stood still, centered, unbroken. When the lights dimmed and guests trickled away, I left the ballroom with my father's hand wrapped around mine, rough and steady. Behind us, Richard slumped like a king dethroned. Eleanor's mascara ran in streaks. Victoria's eyes darted anywhere but toward me. Their empire of lies was crumbling. I didn't need to watch it burn. I was already walking toward my sunrise. The weeks that followed rewrote my life in headlines. Harrison Gala scandal. Prenup declared void. Heiress Carter reclaims trust. Richard tried to spin his story, but the truth had already taken root. The board stripped him of power. Investors demanded accountability. Doors that once opened with a smile slammed shut. Eleanor vanished from society circles, her perfect family exposed. Victoria flooded my phone with apologies, long messages begging me to forgive her silence. Lauren disappeared overseas. Her diamond bracelet appeared at auction weeks later, pawned like the life she gambled. And me? I stepped into freedom. I rented a modest apartment in the city. 4 walls that belonged to me. Not Richard, not Eleanor, not anyone else. I watered plants on my balcony, boiled tea at midnight, laughed without fear of who might hear. But freedom was just the beginning. I re-enrolled and finished my degree. Harvard Law had always been the dream Richard mocked me for. I graduated with honors, my cap and gown heavy with triumph. When Judge O'Connor handed me my diploma, she whispered, "You've already practiced law in the hardest courtroom, your own home." Her words stayed with me. Soon after, I opened my first firm. The woman Richard called a failure now ran a company valued at $57 million. The girl who once pawned her grandmother's bracelet now signed contracts from the backseat of a Mercedes. And the woman who once counted ice cubes for a cruel husband now held the keys to a mansion in New York City. Mine, not his. Everything he used to measure my worth, education, wealth, power, was now in my hands. But victory was not just wealth, it was purpose. I founded the Silent Table, a foundation inspired by the countless dinners where I had been insulted into silence. We offered legal aid and scholarships to women trapped in coercive marriages. One of our first recipients was Marissa, a young mother forced to abandon her career while her husband drained her savings. When I handed her a scholarship check, her hands trembled just like mine had when I held my pawnshop laptop. "I thought I was invisible," she whispered. "You're not," I told her softly. "Not anymore." And in her eyes, I saw myself. Months later, a letter arrived with no return address. Richard's handwriting, uneven. Just one line. "You didn't destroy me. I destroyed myself." I folded it, tucked it into a drawer, and never replied. Because sometimes silence is the loudest answer. Life grew gentler. I planted herbs on my balcony. I cooked for friends. My father visited often, sitting in the same armchair with his tea, reminding me that roots remain even after storms. Sarah cheered at every milestone. Once she told me, "You turned survival into revolution. That's not just living, that's legacy." And I realized revenge had never been my destination. Justice was, dignity was, and beyond them, peace. One evening, as the sun bled gold over the city skyline, I whispered the words that had carried me through the darkest years. 7 years of silence ends tonight. But now, it wasn't a promise of war. It was a hymn of freedom. So if you're listening to my story now, if anyone has ever told you that you're worthless, a burden, or a failure, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not invisible. You are not weak. And you are never a charity case. Respect is not given by blood or by rings on fingers. It is earned through love, through kindness, through courage. And if those around you cannot offer it, you can still claim it for yourself. Because survival is only the first step. Thriving is the next. Now let me ask you, if you were in my place that night, would you have stood on the stage and spoken, or stayed quiet for appearances? Have you ever seen injustice in your own family, where silence felt safer than truth? Share your story in the comments. Someone out there may need your words. And if this story touched you, leave yourself a message below. Something to remember the next time life tries to silence you. And don't forget, subscribe to her Betrayal Stories, where every week, sacrifice meets betrayal, and justice finds its voice. Because together, we remind the world, silence never wins.